Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for ACC. Does she have confidence in the ACC Board?
Honourable Nikki Kay.
Yes. Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Sue Moroney.
Was ACC's recommendation to reduce levies in the work and earners accounts ignored by the government in 2013 and then again in 2015 in order to help the government's books into surplus, as the Prime Minister confirmed in Parliament on Tuesday when he said it was a factor in that decision?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, the government has been very consistent in what we've said about this. We've said a range of factors are taken into account. Surplus may be one factor, but also a number of other factors are taken into account. Long-term view in terms of claimants, current costs around the scheme, the discount rate, a range of things are taken into account.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Sue Moroney.
Will she seek an urgent reconsideration of the government's levy rates in light of ACC's advice to the Select Committee this morning that their work account and earners accounts have already reached the top end of their funding bands? That is, that the work account has reached 140% of what it needs to fully fund the lifetime costs of accidents and injuries in December. That's what the ACC Board told the Select Committee this morning, while the earners account reached 130% of what it requires at the same time.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, I think the member needs to listen at the Select Committee hearing. What I understand the Chair told the Select Committee today from national members who were there is that there's been a $4 billion shift in January around the overall claims liability. That swung back $2 billion in February. But what that demonstrates is the government's very fiscally prudent approach to take a long-term view in terms of ACC.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Sue Moroney.
Is the Minister denying that in December last year the earners account achieved 140% of its funding ratio, and is she denying that the work account achieved 130% in its funding ratio?
Honourable Nikki Kay.
In terms of the workers' account, I would encourage her to understand ACC a bit better and understand gradual process, because when you take into account gradual process, it's not 140%.
Order. We do have a point of order, Sue Moroney.
Mr Speaker, it was a very specific and direct question.
Order. There's a lot of noise in the House today. Would the member please just repeat the question for the Minister to answer?
Can't read it specifically, but I will relate it. Yeah, I'll relate it.
Order.
It's not written down.
Yeah, order.
Is the Minister denying that the work account has achieved 140% of its funding ratio as at December last year, and that the earners account has achieved 130% as at December last year?
Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, with regard to the workers' account, as I said, she hasn't taken into account gradual process, and that's what she continues to fail to do, which means that the solvency rates come down as a result of that. But the second point that I'd make, and this is the main point here, you can take these accounts at a point in time, but if you do that, you end up in the situation that we had, a $5 billion deficit in ACC, because you need to take a long-term view because of the significant shifts in the account. Mr Speaker, the Labour Party need to understand what businesses need is certainty and stability around levies, not a yo-yo effect in what they're proposing.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Sue Moroney.
Given that ACC takes into account all of those factors she just mentioned before they make recommendations to the government, will she stop just making a different excuse every other day about why she won't return ACC levies to the amount and stop overcharging businesses and workers to the tune of $350 million a year?
Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, let me make a couple of points. The first point is, as I've said before, we need to take a long-term view, because otherwise we end up in a situation where we have a $5 billion hole. The second point that I would make to the member is that under our government we have gone from the $5 billion hole to an essentially fully funded scheme. But what businesses don't need is they do not need a yo-yo effect, which is what the Labour Party is promoting. The other point that I'd make is there's been $1.5 billion of reductions under this government.
Money back. Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Sue Moroney.
To the Minister, is she aware that Section 6 of the Act, that she referred to in Parliament on Tuesday is in fact the interpretation section of the Act, which just tells us what various words mean? And can she explain how that section of the Act gives her the legal authority to use ACC levies that are supposed to be gathered to pay for injuries and accidents to achieve a surplus in the government's books instead?
Mr. Speaker, yes,
Well, there was two questions there. Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I am aware that Section 6 is the interpretation section, but she needs to read it in the context of both Section 330 and Section 331(5), and I will read that out for her.
Order. That won't be necessary. The member's answered the question. Is she aware? And she's answered it. Question number 12, Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr.